wanted to tell you a few little things, and then you'll have time to go and pack up. I'm not going to spend 50 minutes or whatever this time. So I want to tell you about my grandmother. As I was saying, she was wonderful to me, and she called me her little lamb. So in 1963, when I was 9, she got sick, and I was the first one there, and I felt quite hurt because she was yelling for my mother, Vera, instead of for me. So she had a stroke, and 10 days later she died. But the sad part for me was I didn't get to go to the funeral because I was only 9, so of course I shouldn't go to the funeral because there's 2 older sisters, so the oldest sister got to go. So that, for a long time, was very sad for me because she'd been like, she was more like my mother to me than my mother was, so I found it very sad. And so then I come to the next thing. My mother died in 2000, and it was a very hard time. She had cancer. First of all, she had cancer in, let's see, 1986. She had breast cancer, and she had a radical mastectomy, but they didn't give her any chemo or radiation, which I think now is probably a mistake, but she was all excited because, you know, she was fine. So then the next year what happened to her was she fell down the stairs at their church because one of her eyes didn't work very well, so she didn't see, and she hit her head, and then her neck was like this. And so for all those years until she died in 2000, she was like this, and the only way she could put it up is if she held it up or if she had a neck thing on. And I think she went through a lot of pain, but she didn't complain or anything. And she was really a wonderful lady. So then, I guess in 1999, she started getting sick again, and it turned out that the cancer had come back and had gone into her bones and into her lungs. So it was a hard time, but you know what was great? When you have cancer and you're dying, if you know the Lord, you know you can have reconciliation. I got to have reconciliation with her, and everyone got to speak to her. And she didn't die until everyone came to see her. And she waited, and doctors couldn't believe she was still alive, and she was down to like 60 pounds and was like this, and she'd never been very heavy anyways. So what happened was my nephew Boyd come all the way from Australia to see her and say goodbye. He was at the Y1 base there, and what happened was as soon as he came, then she died. And all the grandchildren come to say goodbye. You know, and we were all standing around her bed singing songs because everyone in our family, good Methodist tradition, we could all sing. And we're singing in harmony and everything. But she didn't die, and they were all disappointed because they thought, you know, they'd sing her into glory, but she didn't die. And I said to them, being a very private person as I am, I said to them, well, you know, maybe she's just going to go all on her own when no one else is around. And so what happened was, and this is interesting, I had like a prophetic thing. I went to work that day and I wore my dance skirt that I'd worn in the March for Jesus. I thought, this is strange, but I wore that skirt anyways. And then they phoned me at work and told me that she died. And what happened was, because she was so weak, she couldn't get up anymore. My dad was, you know, he's a year older than her, and she was, so he was 76, going on 77, because she almost was 76 when she died. So what happened was, she had to have a home support worker. So the home support worker just got into the bathroom to do some cleaning, and my dad had gone off to do something. She rolled over and she died. So no one was there with her, but you know, she was quite private. I mean, she was brought up English, right? Her mother was English, and I certainly had that. You're private, you don't, you know, you do things in private, you don't go rushing around showing everything to everybody. So, but it was great because she was able to say goodbye to everybody. But the hard part was that, other than my grandma, who died a long time ago, I'd never really met anyone close to me that had died. That sounds strange, I guess. But, so I found it really hard after she died because I'd struggled with her most of my life, and it seems like if you have more struggles with your father or your mother, then it's sometimes harder to cope with it afterwards because you wish you could have said things. But we did reconcile, and And we had gone to, she went to lots of conferences as I did, and it was, who are those people from England, Ed? Bishop. Anglican Bishop.
Bishop David Pitches?
Yeah, David Pitches and his wife were there, and they were talking about how you treat your children, it's going to affect them and all that, and they talked about babies and children, and she did come up to me at that conference and say, you know, oh, did that affect you when I told you that I didn't want you? And I said, yes, of course it did. And so she was crying, and, you know, so we had good reconciliation there, but you know, it was also, she was super controlling and nagging, and unfortunately then I became the same way when I grew up, but it was really hard after she died. I was in such grief, and I cried so much, and you know the thing that I really missed? She was such a great hugger, and there was some woman at our church, a lady who was a former lesbian who'd been on the streets and everything, had been radically transformed. She was like a big mama to everybody, and I said, you know, can you please give me a hug? And so whenever I need a hug, she'd come and give me a hug. And when I was young, because I wanted to be more a guy, because the guys were the ones that were important, and my mother didn't want me to be a girl, so I never liked to hug people or anything. And I found that after she died, I really needed the hugs. And I think when people die, anyone that's had that happen, they need a hug. And so, if anyone needs a hug today, you know, especially the women, I'd be glad to give you a hug, and Ed would be glad to give the men a hug. And I've found now that hugs are really healing, and you don't have to, you know, you just hug from the little bit at the top. You don't have to be a full body hug. That's only for my husband, but I found